welcome to LSDM and to this masterclass. Thank you all for joining us, and thank you, Cristina, for accepting our invitation. So we are holding this masterclass sessions on a regular basis on Wednesday. So for updates on the next sessions, just follow us on our Instagram or Facebook or LinkedIn pages. Feel free to attend every time you want. As usual in these sessions, we will have a first part where Cristina will tell us a little about her project, the why, the what, how, and the main takeaways of the project. And then we will open for Q&A. So feel free to write your questions in the chat in advance, or just use the raise hand tool by the end of the presentation to ask your questions. For today's masterclasses, we invited Cristina Tejada, I think I'm spelling it right? To share her experience and the output of her final project in the Master in Marketing. She will tell us about how e-commerce has influenced the tourism and hospitality industries, focusing on the US case. We know that e-commerce has redefined the way we approach the transaction decisions, and the tourism industry is no exception, as we see how platforms such as Booking, Expedia, or Airbnb changing the competitive environment in the sector. So Cristina is an energetic, enthusiastic, and very goal-oriented person, and she has a very rich and diverse experience. She worked in the tourism sector for many years in different companies, having different roles in sales and communication areas mainly. But the Master in Marketing at LSDM has allowed her to do the shift. And it was after the Master that she started to work in a different sector, the gaming sector. But she didn't stop here. In a few weeks or days, I'm not sure, she will let us know. Cristina will embark on a new challenge in a tech company. So congratulations on this, Cristina. Well done. Thank you so much for having the time to be with us this evening. And I will pass to you now.
My pleasure. Hello, everyone. Thank you for that wonderful introduction. Don't be impressed, please. It's not. She sells me way too well. But yes, so I recently graduated. Actually, I graduated in the past October. Attended the graduation in London. It was fantastic. And yes, I did this master's throughout the pandemic because, of course, tourism was my background then. And as you can imagine and also know from what we witnessed, that industry took a big halt because of the pandemic's consequences. So this is really what drove me into choosing my topic for research for that applied marketing project. Because I think it's important that if you're going to elaborate on such a project of that magnitude, that you should choose a topic that really interests you, because that's going to flow and that's going to drive the information that you feed off and that you discovered. It's also going to give you the experience to tackle those biases that you may have, even though you may have the prior experience. So that was my biggest takeaway from the project that I did. The reason why I chose the United States as a topic is because I needed to have verifiable and quantifiable information. I understand that tourism is a global industry, but the 3 e-commerce platforms that I was doing my research on are actually headquartered in the United States. So this is why I specifically focused on that area. I was looking into Airbnb, Expedia.com, and Booking.com, which were the 3 game players that are redefining how people travel now currently, and they're shaping up how people are going to travel in the future as well. So this is why I chose. So my research was very compare and contrast based, but also it involved a lot of quantitative and qualitative data, secondary research, and also material learned from the course itself, such as different research methodologies that came from the research methods course. It allowed me to discover new types of consumer behaviors and trends as well, to discover them and to provide a feedback and even tailor a mini business marketing plan, which if I could have, but there was a word limit, would have kept on carrying on. So I think the best thing to do is to just give you a general overview of what the project was. I'm not going to go into far too many details. Obviously, we're talking about 64 pages worth for the word count and such, but that way I can give you what the main points, and that you can also get more of a reference as to what approach was taken to each section, if that makes sense. So I'm going to share the screen here. I'm going to see this. Okay.
You also worked in the US, right?
Correct. So I lived in the US for, well, since I was 14 till 21. So yeah. Okay, can everybody see the screen more or less?
Yes, we are seeing it.
Okay, so I'm just going to jump to the main areas of what the biggest takeaways are, and also to give you kind of like a framework. I understand that you are going to have a framework when you do your projects as well, but we can all bounce us up of one another and see what you can take and what can be useful, and I can share what was useful for me as well. So obviously, she's already told you what the title of the project is. Specifically, I was looking at those 3 major platforms in the United States. And I also focused on 3 major hotel groups, as they are the hospitality giants as well in the United States, which were Hilton, Hyatt, and Marriott. All right, so these were the parts, obviously, that we have to cover. The abstract is just a way for you to give a general idea of what the purpose of the project is and what the overview and what you will be discussing, pardon me. So my point in the abstract was just to highlight how I was going to focus on the hospitality industry, but how e-commerce is a trend that is trespassing to every industry, whether it be retail, whether it be the food that we order through Grubhub or such, and Uber. And how that translates into the OTAs, which were the 3 majors that I mentioned previously. Then I go to touch upon the research methods that I used and what I gathered and what I could conclude from, I'm just admitting someone, just 1 second, okay. What I could conclude from the research as well. Fab. Okay.
Cristina, you don't need to bother admitting because we have Louise online. He can help us. That's fine.
It's just popping up on my screen, so I was like, okay.
Don't worry about it.
Amazing. All right. Okay. So going on with the introduction, again, we talk about just setting the overview in the preface. The main takeaway here was that the trend of e-commerce is giving people more purchasing power as opposed to the past. So I don't know what your experiences were when you were traveling in the past, but older generations heavily relied on travel agents. Before the whole online revolution, people didn't really have access to compare and contrast pricing, right? It was just basically, oh, am I getting a good deal? I'm going to trust it and such. So here I basically touch upon how these platforms have enabled for people to make their choices and how that has been what revolutionized the travel industry in itself and why traditional hotels were facing that as a threat, right? To gain that market share, because as we learn, even in the program itself, we have the entry to competitors. If we don't adapt to the environment, then we could be in a really shaky situation. So this is basically what I touched upon here. And then it's important to relay what the research questions were. Now here, I noticed that it's better to have 4 to 5 questions so that we don't get lost in translation. So I was able to determine through research, which I touch upon on the project itself, that the consumer profile in general, which I went to break down into different sections later on in the project, is a savvy traveler. Okay, so they know what the prices are, they know what to expect. And in the beginning, for my hypothesis, I gathered that they were going to be more price-driven than quality-driven, okay? And obviously, I wanted to know, well, is Airbnb, because now we have this new trend where people don't really care about hotels. Maybe they want to stay in a bungalow. I've seen people staying in trailers and such. So is this going to shift the hotel demand? And I also wanted to know, well, are travel agents going to become obsolete? Are they not going to be needed as people are arranging travel for themselves? And of course, offer a solution to the traditional travel sectors so that they can compete against an evolving environment. All right, so the objectives were to obviously do my market research and analysis, provide productive framework and feedback, because at the end of the day, the whole purpose was to provide solutions, right, to the sector that was struggling, which is traditional hospitality. And of course, at the end, develop a mini business plan, marketing plan for a sustainable and profitable direct hospitality company, as opposed to an OTA, right, which is online travel agency. Okay, perfect. Okay, we covered that. So then it came to the part of the hypothesis, and this is where it's going to get really interesting when you get to the part of your project, because you're going to have, this is where I mean the bias comes, those bias walls really come down. It's normal for you to have a perception based, even if you've got vast experience in a sector, from the observations that you've had. So it's important to relay them there. But funny enough, when it gets to the point where you get the hands-on approach, which was the most exciting part of this project, you will notice and say, oh, wow, what I thought is actually not, and there's an opportunity. Yeah, so this is something that you truly learn through doing projects is this. So my main points were that Gen Z millennials are the ones that are contributing to the e-commerce, right? Because they're the ones that are more tech savvy. And I figured that because of this, because they're more tech savvy, more prone to adventures and such, that the demand for traditional hotel rooms is going to decline. And obviously that we have a compare and contrast type of consumer profile. And the travel agents, that they would only have a lifespan of however long baby boomers are going to be booking for. And one big hypothesis that I came up with was that accommodations are having to shift. So it's not your basic having a coffee machine, a little fridge, your bed, desk, and bathroom that matters anymore, but you have to offer some sort of distinction. And also that loyalty programs, which was huge to retain travelers to come back, was losing its power. Okay, great. So we get into the part of the methodology. As I mentioned, as you go along through the course, you're going to find out that there are many different types of methodologies that will be suitable for the type of research that you're doing. So for me, secondary was quite important because I needed to find out what was happening as far as, well, what Statista says, or Deloitte, these reputable resources that have those sort of statistics and actually do those kind of market research. Yes. And of course, so my two main points for that was Statista and Deloitte, and I found them to be the most reputable and also the ones to offer the most detailed information.
Yes, Deloitte has an annual report on tourism and hospitality.
Absolutely.
Where they just research the entire world or the sector for every country.
Yes. By country, by you name it, by consumer profile, yes. Fantastic. Then, of course, comes in the part where you do your own research on hand. I think this was the part that I enjoyed the most because this was my firsthand experience actually analyzing data that I gathered myself directly. So it was interesting to be able to have that opportunity to take something, do the hypothesis testing, put the right questions in, and get the results and realize that maybe what I thought was completely different to what I even imagined after years of experience. So I did that in the form just to give you an idea. Secondary, we know came from those reputable sources, but I did it in the form of interviews with travel professionals and also through a survey through 2 different websites. One was Survey Planet and Survey Monkey, and this actually gave me the ability to cover it specifically to a control group. So I was able to do it to people in the US because it enabled for these type of filters and such. And also I was able to see the age groups, their comments, and all of this. Okay, the literature review is more of what we're used to when it comes to, well, analyzing what other people have said, what other literary work that's been done. Now, in this, of course, you have to cite a lot. It's important that you give people the credit that they earned, but it also gives you more ideas to think about. And it gives you different perspectives as to what other people have observed, right? Which feeds off of your research as well. So that will also come into the information that you may find. Okay, so with the Apply Project Diagnostics, this is also very useful because it allows you to apply, again, content from the courses itself, okay? So I was able to do an in-depth pestle analysis, right? I was able to do a marketing mix. So lots of putting forth the theoretical from the project, right? From the course, pardon me, from the course itself into the project. The market analysis, again, this is where it came useful to look into sources as Deloitte and Statista, because this is where you get that quantifiable and verifiable information, right?
And so how was it to use Statista? Because I don't do research, so I don't use that tool a lot. I know that there are tons of information there. So how was your experience using Statista? Was it?
It was, I'll be honest, I was able to get so much information, even to the point where it was visually verifiable, you see. And I decided to include that in the project because I was able to analyze it. Now, in this sense of this part of the project, it's not just saying this person said this and that, right? Or Statista says this and that. Of course,
the data confirm what they say.
The data confirms what they said, but at the same time, it incites your analytical skills. Because what you do, for example, you come up with the percentages, right? So you say, okay, I'm seeing that this age group and this age group are more prone to this. This means that we have 70%. So you're basically, processing the information that's in front of you, and it incites your analytical skills to come up with percentages, differences, and such. So that was very useful in that sense. So demographics, this is where we dive into the information that is available to you through Statista and through Deloitte. Yeah, that's how those percentages were just basically like, I was able to see from the information, okay, 78%, 36%, right? So it's, the information makes that click. So you're also kind of preparing yourself in that natural market research, having to present to maybe someone, right? You can actually say, listen, I have the information here, but I was able to process it, and this is what what's there.
And it also gives you the chance to reframe your questions if the data confirmed that your hypothesis was wrong.
Correct. So
it's a good tool just to realize if you are going in the right path or not in your project.
Exactly. You actually become quite enlightened at this point. So this is basically, in general, you get the idea. This was a part of the market research and the analytics. And it also helped when it came to the trend and forecasting. Because again, we have to look ahead into what's coming up. And these sources as well help with finding the information, and also for you to be able to visualize, right, what could be and how to be better prepared for it. So based on the information that I received from both those sources, and also from what I learned and gathered after analyzing it, I was able to see what the major areas were. And this is where I focused again on the hospitality direct hotel companies, because here we're gearing into offering those solutions. So the opportunities were in corporate and business travel. I came to realize this, obviously not to the way that it was pre-pandemic, but it's still a sector that is still ongoing, okay? Think about how many people came to graduation and had to do travel arrangements, right? The same conferences that are going on. So maybe they're not to the extent that they were before, but that's still something that hotels have as a backup. And then there was a huge opportunity with remote work and travel. And this was one of my best discoveries. And it came to be something that I also mentioned in the part where I talk about my consumer profiles. So again, because people are working from home, many companies are offering this hybrid working model. A new term, which is called leisure. It's actually a combination of business and leisure. Has come about as an upcoming trend, as an ongoing trend currently in the travel sector and tourism sector, because people could just take their laptops, they can work from anywhere. And so if hotels, right, were to give them that facility of what they need, that was another opportunity that they could definitely capitalize in.
It's the digital nomads.
Exactly,
Yeah.
absolutely. And then, of course, private rentals has always it's been in a lucrative position. Airbnb has basically been the game changer with that coming about. However, what I did discover is that hotels are now trying to make their amenities more residential-like for that reason. And it came to be part of what I put in my marketing plan, because I feel like that's how they're going to be able to mutually compete, right? Because what Airbnb did was offer a differentiation, right? Hey, you have a host. You don't have some guy in a suit that's trying to be, that feels.
You will feel like home.
Exactly. Exactly. Fantastic. Okay, so with that also come the competitor analysis, and I did that through all 3 OTAs as well as the hotels themselves. Now we know in a competitor analysis, we just look at market cap, what their audiences are, what pricing strategies they do, how they distribute, how they reach consumers, how they differentiate themselves. And that's just so that I can have an overview per each company, because I chose, as I mentioned, the 3 major hotel groups and the 3 major OTAs, how they differentiate from one another, and also what could be taken from each, right, to offer a solution to the traditional hotels. We have our, everybody should know what a SWOT analysis is, I hope. So we did that, of course, throughout the project. And then in this section, I basically more focused on the OTAs themselves. So as I mentioned, the 3 main ones, Airbnb, Booking.com, and Expedia. And this was more about the marketing mix. Okay, so this was pretty simple. And it was just looking at each company and the 4 Ps for each and one of them, and what they offer, and what their strategies are, who they segment, who they target, how they position themselves, right? So it was basically the 4 Ps, how they segment themselves as well. And also a little bit into their brand positioning and how they've achieved that. Okay. So this, the part of the applied project action plan, this is basically talking about the time scale, how you did and what you did, and when and how you accomplished that, by what stage. So this is basically breaking it down into stages, saying what was accomplished, how you lay your objectives per stage. In the introductory, was it more research? In the second one, was it more market? And the third one, I started conducting surveys. So it's basically saying how you went about elaborating your project. Now, this is the best, this was my favorite part of the project, as I mentioned, the analysis report, because this is where you actually had the opportunity to do the work for yourself. It was my first-hand opportunity where I felt like I was truly being a market researcher, because it was the methodology that I chose to employ. So it was important to talk to travel professionals. I chose somebody that had worked for Hilton for 15 years and also several cruise lines. So he had a very heavy knowledge. And then someone who worked for Apple Leisure Group, which includes all of the resorts, you name it, and they're part of Hyatt, so they're very high up there. So I was able to talk to them and how they felt about it. And I asked them specific questions. And the questions was, well, having worked in hotels previously, would you say that people have lost interest in staying in traditional hotels compared to years before? Do you agree that travelers are more prone to reserve vacation rentals and unique accommodations to types of stays? And what types of travelers would you say mainly prefer traditional hotels, and which ones do you prefer vacation rentals? The other main question was, knowing that many people choose to make travel arrangements for themselves nowadays, do you believe that this will lead to the obsolescence of travel agents? And what advice would you give to hotels who may be struggling to keep up with the changes in today's market? All right. So it was quite interesting because one of them, actually, he still works in the hospitality group, the Apple Leisure Group and Hyatt. So he knows what's going on, but he actually has several properties that he's using as Airbnb rentals. Yeah, so that was the best part because I was able to hear both his input.
Yes.
Exactly. So basically, he said that he agrees that traditional hospitality companies need to offer a more connected approach. Okay. Today's travelers want to feel more connected. They don't really care about amenities. They don't really care about the fancy smoochiness. They want something that feels like a unique experience where they can truly connect. So he did mention that hoteliers could benefit from using a strategy where they feel more personalized rather than capitalizing on their names, because people don't really care about the names anymore. People care about the experiences. Okay, so in this part, this was again one of the most interesting ones because it was my own direct research where I did the survey. I had about 170 something participants from the United States. Yeah, and I did it, as I mentioned, through those two websites. And I was able to get written feedback as well as percentage and polls. So there we go. So this is where you see all those fun graphs, right? But this was
a lot of work.
Oh yeah. This is basically breaking down what the results were. But this is directly from the research that I did. What their ages were, what the demographics were and such. The results by gender. And the majority factors. So the majority of the respondents that I had were actually students and employed professionals on hourly wages, ranging from 18,000 to 25,000 per year. Some of them earn 30 to 60. Most of them travel once to twice per year. And from the numbers that you can see, I wanted to know if they were people that travel more on their own, if they travel more with families. And the consensus was that most of them were leisure travelers rather than business travelers. So that was quite interesting. So this was 100%. This was the most verifiable point, both by the secondary research and also the research I carried out myself through the surveys. And it is that, yes, people do prefer to make travel arrangements themselves nowadays. Okay, they want to know, they compare and contrast. They do their own thing. And as you can see, it is a number, 90%. So no doubt we are doing it ourselves.
At least in this range.
Yes, that
people that you surveyed. Yes.
At least in this range, right? That's good. Always keep an open mind, right? Because I could be wrong. So you learn with these. All right. So just from my second observation, I actually wanted to know if there was going to be a drastic difference between travelers choosing directly with a hotel chain or through the e-commerce platforms. And what I liked from what I learned just from this is that there was actually an opportunity because they were balanced out, which was good news, right? Okay.
Really good. I thought the percentage was higher for booking using the platforms. But see, I'm being biased by my
exactly
behavior.
Exactly. My research itself showed that I was shocked. Even some of the 25-year-olds who I thought were going to be all about OTAs, they said they would go for hotels. So this is, again, you just have to test the waters, right?
Right.
Okay. All right. So for the questions that I had, because this is where it comes to the research questions and answering them, and your own research and the secondary research is where you kind of elaborate on this and mention why. This is where you prove whether what your questions are and whether what you thought would be is right or wrong, right? The hypothesis. So the results that I was able to gather was that the savvy traveler profile, right, is more price driven than quality driven. However, that they're willing to pay higher prices if they deem it as the quality being there. Okay. And this was really interesting because I think this is a big question that everybody has, right? With the rising trends in C2C, such as Airbnb or hotels facing a potential decline, this was actually a breath of relief for me because I came to find out when I saw that balance that hotels
actually not.
They're actually not. No, they're actually not. So they're not facing a potential decline against vacation rentals. Surprisingly, we're talking about 64, close to 65, chose to book hotels directly as their primary choice of accommodation. And only 24, right, chose apartments or house rentals. So the opportunity was there. And I was shocked to see also that younger generations express this. This was the point where I mentioned, yes, that is 100% verifiable. We book things ourselves, whether we book directly with the hotel or through the OTAs. And okay, so a big question that I had here, again, just to offer the solution, was how can traditional tourism sectors like hotels capitalize on current trends? So what I was able to observe from the surveys is that travelers are not too keen on amenities as they were before, like having your little shampoo or having the coffee. And that there was still that demand, that interest for the hotels. But what hotels need to do, and this is where they can capitalize on an opportunity, well, if amenities are not as important as before, there's a huge saving for you. And you can use that towards creating that experience or resetting the type of accommodation that you're setting. So redefining the service offering. And I elaborated a little bit on that on the recommendations as well. Mm-hmm. Okay. So when it came to the hypothesis, again, this is where I had an idea, but this is what I came to discover. And this is where you compare and contrast the survey results from the secondary sources and such. So to an extent, as I had thought, yes, millennials and Gen Z are more prone to book through the OTAs. But we also have another segment that we could capitalize on, and that's people from 30 to 50 who are this leisure enthusiasts now, because they can work from anywhere, right? And the demand for traditional hotels chains is still at an opportunity, right? So yes, we have the game changers as Airbnb. We're redefining the standards, and this is what led to this assumption. But however, despite this being kind of what everybody would maybe assume because of Airbnb's success, there is still demand for traditional hotel stays, as we were able to see from the research. And yes, we compare and contrast, we weigh our options when we travel. This is why we go on Booking, we can choose the prices and select us and such. So definitely price has something to deal with our decision-making now. And yeah, so our next big travel segment is that savvy traveler. However, I did come up with 3 main consumer profiles that I will elaborate on later on. And as far as travel agents were concerned, they are still being supported by the baby boomer generation, Gen X, but they may not resonate or be as important as they were before. Because again, we just do travel arrangements ourselves nowadays. So that's going on a bit of a decline.
Yes, our behavior has changed, but it changed for everything. It's not only for booking travels or hotels, which we do this for everything. We go to the web to search for everything. We change our behavior in terms of buying things. So
Absolutely. Yeah. So, I mean, they're still going to be around, right? So you're still going to have your niche sector. So if it's something very specific and someone's a specialist on it, they'll still be around. But for the general tourism, this trend is it's where we're headed, right? Doing the travel arrangements ourselves. Okay. And yes, traditional hotels are going to have to adapt to the new market demands, change your accommodation types and service offering to that personable touch, capitalize on not having to invest in amenities, rather make it experience-based, right? Technology is huge, right? Technology is a huge factor that hotels need to also look into, because it's influencing not only how consumers come to, right, to the hotel chains, but also how the operations are being run. Absolutely. And yes, loyalty programs. Remember when you had the Mile High clubs in the airlines, and that's it's no longer as impactful to drive an incentive for people to stay with a brand, because again, the pricing and the compare and contrast profile that we have will just go for what's best. Now, the main question here, okay, was, because I wanted to know, I think the biggest comparison was because Expedia and Booking.com offer the hotels, right? They're kind of like a middleman, right? But what interested me was the big game changer here was Airbnb. They're the ones that changed completely and offered a whole new differentiation concept. So I was curious to know, if hotels were to offer, you know, something similar to what Airbnb has as their offering, would they consider it as an alternative to booking Airbnb? And the number was 89.7. So what I saw there's the opportunity to mutually compete. So what do we have to do? It comes back to square one. Change your service.
But you are already seeing that, because now when you search for an hotel on Booking, you can also see Airbnb options there, and the other way around too. When you search for Airbnb, sometimes you get some results that are really hotels.
Hotel-like, yeah. So, and overall, it's not all a bad thing, okay? So e-commerce has kind of been this redefined, let's just say it's just redefined how tourism has worked. But it's not been all in bad, right? Because think about it in the past. If we didn't have these e-commerce platforms and how technology has impacted how we make our reservations and travel, well, that wouldn't have that exposure effect, right? Because as opposed to the way that things were done in the past, we were limited, right? Now we have an opportunity to, well, even as a business, right? Even as a hotel, even if I'm starting at one myself, I have these platforms to give me exposure, not only to one specific market, but even worldwide.
Yes, you can scale your business.
You can scale.
So you shouldn't see as a threat, but as an opportunity.
That's an opportunity as well, correct. So this is where I kind of did my own little little service offering as to what I think it should be. And I touched upon the consumer profiles that I was able to find. And I came up with a modern hospitality company, and I like to call it Wanderlofts. It just came to my mind. Kind of like a play on words on Wanderlust. People love, you know. So I did a little bit of a plan, a marketing plan, a business plan where we talk about the executive summary, what the mission is. And basically the mission was to offer something different from traditional hotels and vacation rentals. So I wanted to have something that blended in both worlds. something that offered a new concept where you kind of took the best of each and put it in a blender and somehow made it work. And the vision for that company that I had was to be a primary choice for nomadic travelers, thrill seekers, and bleisure type of travelers. As we know, those were the trends. And I basically offer different types of services, combining what hotels.
The best of two worlds, yes.
The best of two worlds. Okay. And then again, just talking about how the spaces need to change, right? For that person who's on the go, right? That last minute booker, which is very common that you see on the OTA, offer something that's convenient to them, that has that home-like feel, an on-the-go accommodation. To kind of mirror Airbnb's concept as well. You can offer a second home type of space where you have those things that make you feel like you're home away from home, right? So you see, again, a blend of what both offerings are. And then I think offer a unique space, right? Offer something different, offer a space where that person who's never experienced such a thing, a tree house, or as I mentioned, oh, okay, you took this trailer and you built it up and you made it into something different, right? And then they're taking all the pictures on Instagram because it's so cool. So offer something like that. So if you were to be a modern hospitality, if you take the best of both worlds and actually have different offerings to tailor these bleisure types, these thrill seekers, you're basically going to have something to offer to each different type of consumer profile that is trending nowadays. That's just going on to operations and how it works, and then our marketing mix for the company. Mm-hmm. So we know positioning, differentiation. You're all doing your study, so I don't need to tell you much on that. Okay, so when it came to the consumer profiles, and I think this was one of the biggest takes.
Yes, it was one of my questions for the end, so go ahead. I'm curious.
Absolutely. So for the consumer profiles, as I mentioned, yes, there's the savvy traveler in general. But what I figured was that I was going to segment them into three, okay? And what we're seeing headed towards the future, the type of traveler that we are becoming, right? Again, the bleisure traveler. Post-pandemic effect, hybrid work model, laptop, but I can have my feet in the pool while I'm doing my work, right? So this is a person who can work from anywhere and enjoys balancing life and work. And then you have the adventure seeker. Now, this is a person always eager to try new things. This is your TikTokers, your...
Yes, it will be the guys for the experience things.
Exactly.
The house in a tree, or the design rooms, or whatever.
The upside down room, or...
Yes, the Instagrammable experiences.
Exactly. And then you've got that last minute planner. I mean, sporadic in their decision making. So this person is literally, okay, oh, I just found out I have a free, I have a free couple of days to do as I please. They won't even have any plans. They'll just go on and look at what different options they have. That looks good. Let me just do that, right? So that's what I base my accommodations in. Those three type of profiles and what their needs were. Okay, so at this point, you had any questions about the consumer profiles you wanted to?
No, now I realize what type of profiles have you identified during your work. I have a question, although it's because you talked about this in the beginning. What were your findings and how will people travel in the future?
Well,
it's not an easy question, I know.
No.
I'm not asking you to do predictions on the future, but based on your experience during the project.
During the project, what I saw is that the more that we are going to go far along, it's all going to be about the next step. What's the next exciting thing to do? And that's what we're seeing with, as you mentioned, the Instagrammers and the TikTokers. because yes, we still have the generation of our generation, or the nomadic travelers and that leisure traveler profile. But headed towards the future, these guys are posting their dances on TikTok and all of this. It's, for them, it's about something that's edgy, right? So they're looking for something edgy to look for. And the way that they can travel, I think it's going to be not really looking into the luxury of things. So yes, of course, you're going to have people who are looking for that comfort, right? But it's really not important for someone to have this amazing flight with hot towels, or it's irrelevant to them. What they get me
They're
there.
searching for the experience in local. Yes.
Get me there, and let me have something to post on my social media. That's cool. And
actually, I have one more question, which is regarding, because we are all talking about sustainability. And I think that the newer generations are more aware of this. Do you think this will also influence on the way people travel? I think so. But can you imagine a future where we do not move physically, but we will travel virtually?
It could be. Why not?
It's too moonshot for now.
Listen, there's something else that's really interesting. You've got likes like Richard Branson, right? He's been, I've been looking a lot into what he's doing. He's been huge in entering the hospitality industry. I mean, he's made Virgin Voyages, so he's tapped into the cruise ship industry. He's got his own OTA, right, as well. But now he's looking at Virgin Intergalactic, right?
Yeah. Yes.
So who knows, it could become a standard that we're going to go to outer space next weekend. If that were to happen, I will get back into hospitality.
I can try that area. I never tried, so, but I'm willing to.
Haven't been myself just yet. So again, just going into wrapping up, the recommendations I basically touched upon as we talked about. It's all about them, the traditional hospitality companies. They're not at a do. They're just having to adapt and redefine their offerings. And they need to capitalize on the opportunity that they don't have to spend as much as they actually are, because travelers don't really care about the little towelettes or the towels, or they want the experience and they want the connection. So in an overall sense, that's it in a nutshell. And yeah, I mean, that's basically what I gathered, and it was very enriching. I was able to share this with, even though I'm not in the hospitality sector anymore, as I've branched out to two completely different sectors, but I think it was time for a new challenge, right? Yeah. This is something that was still very true to my heart, and I think it's very important. I'll share this with all of you, that whatever topic you choose is something that really interests you, that you feel like you could provide a change to. I've shared this with fellow colleagues in the hospitality industry. And yes, if you have any questions.
I'm looking at the chat. So I have a question from Manuel Macedo Filho. So he's a designer, illustrator, and teacher. I think it's only a thought, and I can see the hotel rates are increasingly expensive around the world, and that the service does not improve even with the digital advance. Can you give us your comment on this?
Okay, so just say that one more time. I want to hear every single point.
So I see that hotel rates are increasingly expensive around the world. Yes. And that the service in the hotels didn't improve, even though they have this digital advance. So what are your thoughts on this?
I would think this is an effect on post-pandemic, because what I keep on hearing from the hoteliers that I still work with, right, that are my colleagues, is that they're in a recovery phase, right? and this translates to cruise ships as well. Many of my friends who work in the cruise ship industry, the companies had to take these drastic measures, such as even having to do redundancies, having to limit the amount of staff that they were hiring. So I think it's a basic economic impact of the recovery, right? To make ends meet. And I think this is an effect of the post-pandemic and not having that cash flow that was normally coming in, especially when many of these companies were trying to expand at the time.
Yes, and they had this shock, and now they need to recover, or at least they need some time to recover, and then they can adapt. That's your opinion. Okay, and Malak is asking if you can share the website that you use for the surveys. I think you said
yes.
Survey Monkeys.
Yeah, so Survey Monkey, Survey Planet. Let me just double check here. Here we are. Okay.
And while you search for that, I don't know if someone else has more questions. Joanna had to leave.
Yeah, she did mention.
She's working in the tourism area now. She left you a message. Yes, yes. She's working in a local accommodation company.
Oh, wow.
So you better catch up with her.
Yeah, no, and there are so many opportunities at the moment.
And you are changing also. When do you start at your new challenge?
Okay, so just to give an overall reference to everybody, and I'll put the links in just a moment after this. At the moment, I was working in the gaming industry out of, it's very interesting that I went from tourism to gaming, but it was an opportunity that presented itself, so I went for it. But it was great. Because it gave me the opportunity to work on a business-to-business scale, right? And it's almost like it was an experience that I needed, even though I've only done it for 6 months, but it's given me that ground, that ability to put it on my CV to enter a new business-to-business role within the tech company. My vision for myself was to get into tech because I feel that is an industry that is thriving. I think it's an industry that is growing and it's sustaining itself, and it's one of the best at the moment. So this is why I had my eye on tech. I applied. I had to do several stages of the interview, and starting on next Wednesday, I am a new business developer executive for a tech company based here in the UK, but also with locations in the US.
Congratulations. I'm so happy for you.
Thank you.
Well, and we are almost finishing. It's 7 o'clock, guys. Thank you all for your time. Cristina, do you manage to share the links with Malak? Otherwise, Malak, we can send you an email with this. So I will talk to Cristina and we can get the information and send it by email. Oh, here it is, Survey Monkey. And we have a question from Travelter, John Matali, I think that's the name. Hi, everyone. I'm a communication specialist. What recommendations would you prescribe for the hotel industry? Sorry, because your links are ruining my...
Oh, I'm so sorry.
That's fine. So what recommendations would you prescribe for the hotel industry in the hopefully unlikely event there's another pandemic or event that might hit the ability to host guests? Any mitigating advice?
Ooh, yes, that's a very
If you know the answer to this question, Cristina, you can come back to the tourism sector.
You can come back. It's unfortunately, facing a challenge like the pandemic where sanitation standards, I mean, that's a big compliance factor for especially traditional hospitality companies. What I would say in that case is to be prepared for the worst, because I feel like that was the biggest lesson that we learned from this from this pandemic. Many of these industries, many of these hotels, so they were growing, the cruise ships, just to give you an example, they were hit so hard when the halt of operations took place, but they got themselves too deep because they were already putting all of that cash flow that was coming in into building new ships. Same for maybe some hotels that were expanding to different cities or different areas, right? So in that case, what I would suggest is don't run yourself in the deep, right? Let the capital and the cash flow come in and build itself so that it's there before you make that investment, right? Also, there's a factor that you have to be really careful with when it comes to hotels and reservations, because I can make a reservation for, let's say, today or tomorrow or a month from now, but how many of you have made a reservation and canceled it within a week or two? Right?
Yes.
So in that case, I know that there's cancellation fees, and I know that this might sound a little bit harsh, but given the nature of what's happened, and just to address your question, having that commitment or penalty fee at a higher rate so that you can at least know that your losses will be covered if this is going to be the case.
Yeah. We also have a comment from Luis. So Luis Almeida owns a glamping, and the commission from sites like Booking forces this kind of business to have a lot of direct bookings to get better prices.
Of course they do.
Yes.
So actually, I was speaking with. This is a very good question and a very good point. I had the opportunity to meet one of the managers for a company called Voucher, based here in the UK. It's kind of like Groupon, but they also have, so they work with retail, they work also with travel. They have a travel aspect to their sites. So it's very similar to what you mentioned, Luis. And yes, they are going to force you as a medium channel to try and book direct, because it's better for them, isn't it? I get a better portion of the pie. But this is where you have to turn around, and this is what Voucher has done, and they've been really successful at doing this. Just to give you an example, what they've done is they already have a huge database of people in the UK that have a membership with them. So they offer the incentives because of this membership to offer them deals, okay? Now, the biggest objection that they get from hoteliers, from big hotel chains and such, or prestigious companies, to not be featured through them is that same one that you've mentioned, where they say, hey, but I can get a direct booking, a better quality client, right? Why do I need you? So this is where you go ahead and say, because I've got the guarantee that I can always bring you someone into the traffic, right? So the hotel, right? They can say, you know what, I'll book direct and I'll have a suite that's going to sell better. Yeah, well, what if that suite cancels? Or what if that suite doesn't sell? Would you rather have an empty room? Or would you rather have the alternative of having already a database that is there, even if it's not at that price, but you're still making something? Not
at least you recover something.
At least you're recovering something.
It's not a total loss.
Not a total loss, exactly.
Okay, no more questions or comments. It's 7:04. We need to end this. These sessions take less time, but this time the conversation was so good. Cristina, thank you so much for your time. Absolutely. Thank you for all the ones that kept with us until the end of the session. And let's meet on Wednesdays. Next week we will have another masterclass. So see you soon. Bye.